You base the design of planes on science, they fly. If you base the design of rockets on science, they reach the moon. It works, bitches.
As Muslims, we have a right to bring up our children in accordance with our beliefs, which have served us over the centuries well. Now, I'll give you the same right to bring up your children in the way that you want. What about the rights of the
children themselves?
Well, the rights of the children come when they are they're old enough to understand the issues. Until they get to that age, it's the parents' responsibility and duty.
Do you teach them that apostates should be punished?
You may not share that, but that is my religion. That is the way I've been brought up, and I bring that child into this world, I educate him, I give him everything. It's my right to make sure that I bring him, and I take issue with that. You think that it's wicked, well, that's your point of view. I know that's going to make him a better human being, and what's missing is, when you talk about faith, you don't look at what faith teaches. First and foremost, what faith teaches is that, listen, you're a human being, so respect your fellow human beings. And I think that's the important point that you don't want to discuss.
What is the penalty for apostasy?
And that is the thing that you fail to discuss, and that's why you've got those prejudicial views about faith.
What is the penalty for apostasy? What do you teach the children will happen to them if they give up the Muslim faith?
Well, let's bring the debate back into Britain.
What is the penalty for apostasy?
I'll tell you what we will do, because we could go down this road a very long way, and it's obviously very important. Maryam Namazi was born in Iran before her family left in the wake of the Islamic revolution. You are part of the British Council of Ex-Muslims. I presume that you believe religious principles are not entirely helpful to developing moral values.
No, I actually think that oftentimes religious principles are actually quite immoral, to be quite frank. And I think that if you look at examples where girls are sexualized at a very young age, for example, if you look at Islamic schools where they're forced to veil, where they're taught that they're different from boys, where they're not allowed to listen to music, where they're completely segregated, and many such examples like that. I think, in fact, if there is any good morality that comes out of even religious education, it's not because of religion, it's oftentimes despite religion, and it's the result of an enlightenment and a vast social movement for 21st century values that have had an effect on religion as well.
Let me bring in, I will come to you in a moment. Let me bring in Mohammed Muqaddam in response to that. I don't want to misreport, but at Muslim schools, the girls are put into a position where they are diminished as human beings.
Well, it's often the case where people are ignorant of what goes on in faith schools and Muslim schools. The fact is, our schools are run along a legal lines. They treat both sexes equally, provide them with the best opportunities. So it's often a case of people who have prejudices and ignorance.
Maryam?
I mean, I think it's typical of Islamic schools and the political Islamic movement to label any criticism a sort of prejudice and thereby racism, thereby trying to make people silent on criticizing it. I think the issues are very clear. I mean, the head of the Islamia school, for example, was quoted in an interview saying that you're born a Muslim, you're always Muslim, you can't leave. And that's things that have been told to me untold times for having renounced religion and Islam. There is threats, there is intimidations. Just yesterday, a 16-year-old girl was killed by her father for refusing to wear the veil. I think Islamic schools very much do suppress and restrict girls.
Richard Dawkins, from your perspective, presumably you wouldn't be entirely opposed at all to the idea.
I would be thoroughly in favour of education in the Bible as literature. You can't understand English literature without the Bible. You can't take your allusions. And that's an aspect of what the bishop was saying. He's absolutely right. This is a Christian country. Historically, it's a Christian country. You can't understand English history or English literature without a knowledge of the Bible. And by the way, I think I should say that the act of collective worship, I don't approve of it, but nevertheless, the Christian religion, especially I think the Anglican religion, is benign by comparison. If a child at the end of its school career wants to give up religion, the church will quite happily say, okay, go your own way. The penalty for apostasy in the Christian religion is not death. There is no penalty for apostasy at all in the Christian religion. The Christian religion is comparatively benign, and we should respect it as such.
Richard Dawkins, does a God-shaped perspective or set of values do any harm to the way in which children should be taught at schools?
Thou shalt have no other God before me, thou shalt make no graven image, thou shalt keep the Sabbath holy. What on earth's that got to do with anything to do with morals? That's the Ten Commandments, or at least 3 of them. It would be deeply depressing if the only way children could get moral values was from religion, either from Scripture, and God knows we don't want them to get it from Scripture, I mean just look at Scripture, or from God, being intimidated by God. Anybody who is good for only those 2 reasons is not really being good at all. Why not teach children things like the golden rule, do as you would be done by? How would you like it if other children did that to you? So why do you do it to them?
So God is not only irrelevant, God is damaging.
I didn't say God was damaging, but I think it's depressing that anybody should suggest that you actually need God in order to be moral. I would hope that our morals come from a better source than that, and that therefore they are genuinely moral rather than based on outmoded Scripture or based on fear.
Professor Dawkins said, if a child is born into a family given a certain religion, when that child growing up basically knows more about their religion, and as they grow up they learn about other religions and choose, and
Are you saying that the fact that you're brought up within a religious faith doesn't prevent you being open-minded or adopting any religion or none?
Not at all. It does not prevent me from being open to other religions. I, in fact, have come to this country and chose to put the veil on. I have come to this country without a veil on.
So not so very wicked is the view.
But what is the penalty for apostasy? What is the penalty for leaving the Muslim faith?
To be honest, I cannot back that point up.
Dr. Mukadam, what is the penalty for apostasy?
And, before...
We keep coming down this apostasy.
Well,
give us a quick answer on what is the penalty for apostasy, and then we'll come and do it.
You very well know, if it's an Islamic country, then the Sharia is very clear. Apostasy is dealt with the death penalty.
Thank you, that's all I want to hear.
But what's the relevance between what happens in an Islamic country and Great Britain? I fail to see the connection.
Okay, I see a some more voice.
I mean, do you actually believe in your Muslim faith? Do you believe that Muhammad split the moon in 2? Do you believe that Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse, for example? I pay you the compliment of assuming that you don't.
No, I do. I believe in miracles.
You believe that?
Yes.
You believe that Muhammad went to heaven on a winged horse?
Yes, I believe in God. I believe in miracles. I believe in revelation. I mean, the point here is that let's assume I'm wrong, Richard. I'm wrong.
Let's
assume I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I'm happy to concede that, Richard. I'm happy to concede it. I'm wrong. All religions are wrong. God does not exist. We're all mad.
I care about what's true. I'm an educator. I'm a scientist. And I want people to understand the truth about the universe in which they live. That's what I care about. And I regard religion as a distraction, and in some cases a pernicious distraction from true education, which I love and value the way you value and love your God.
Can you not do both?
Well, so long as they don't contradict
each other.
Richard. As long as they don't contradict each other. But if you actually believe Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse, that's an anti-scientific belief.
And that could be wrong.
But that very well is wrong.
But that doesn't change. That doesn't change. How do you know it's wrong?
Oh, come on. You're a man of the 21st century.
No, I'm just asking. It comes back to my original question. The rational position is the agnostic. The rational position is the agnostic position.
Why up there? What, I mean,
the rational position. I didn't say up there. I didn't pick a place.
Okay,
you
well,
place.
why would a winged horse be the way to get to heaven if it's not up there?
I asked a question about. You asked about proof. I'm all for saying I can't prove it, but can you prove he didn't do it? I mean, this is the end-all debate.
Can I prove he didn't fly to heaven on a winged horse?
I'm just asking on your criteria. I'm just asking on your criteria.
No, I can't prove it, and I can't prove it wasn't a golden unicorn.
But I'm fascinated that you're rather talk about what animals the Prophet may or may not have used 1400 years ago, rather than talk about what Muslims or Islam is doing in the world today, good or bad. Well, that seems to be the distraction. If anyone's distracted, it seems to be you.
Well, that's your view. I'm fascinated by how somebody, a respected, sophisticated journalist in the 21st century, can believe
believe that a prophet flew to heaven on a winged horse.
Let me ask you this. Are all people who hold beliefs in God and in miracles and the supernatural, do you regard them all as intellectually inferior to you?
Teach the controversy rather than try and censor out the information that shows that evolution is questionable.
Seriously, where did you study science?
Well, see, that's the point. Scientists are now claiming that they're the only ones that can speak on this issue. It's almost like a religion in which only scientists are allowed to speak and teach on it, and to teach everyone else. And everyone else must believe what the scientists, what particular scientists say. Where is the evidence of evolution from one species to another species? The macroevolution. There's microevolution within a species, but not going from one species to another.
Oh, really?
If we had gone from that broad of an evolution, there should be overwhelming tons of material evidence, not just an isolated thing here and there. But again, there is not evidence.
Almost every fossil you find is intermediate with something and something else.
If that were the case, the Smithsonian Natural History Museum would be filled with these examples, but instead they're not.
It is. And I just told you about Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens. By the way, archaic Homo sapiens and then modern Homo sapiens. That's a beautiful series of intermediates.
You're still lacking the material evidence.
The material evidence is there. Go to the museum and look at it. Have you seen Homo erectus? Have you seen Homo habilis? Have you seen Australopithecus?
What I've seen is that in the museums and in the textbooks, that whenever they claim to show the evolution from one species to another, it relies on illustrations and drawings,
no, it doesn't.
Not the not any material evidence. If they were in the museums, which I've been to many times, then I would look at them objectively. But there's a variety of opinions across the board among those who may not buy completely into the hardcore ideas of evolution. There are those who believe in different levels of evolution within creation, and that really shows kind of a creative independence within our movement that seems to be a bit lacking among those who believe in evolution and only evolution. And the ad hominem attacks to ad hominem attacks, ad hominem, it's the hardcore evolutionists that reject the idea of a creator that then pave the foundation for a very brutal society. Don't have good evidence of positive mutations being the ones that are then built on, because if they're a mutation, they're alone. So in order for something to rise up and have more of it, you need to have a good base to choose from. I think it helps to show that people are using their critical factories, and so we don't need to deny any facts, because the facts end up bearing out our beliefs. If evolution had occurred, then surely, whether it's going from birds to mammals or even beyond that, surely there'd be at least one evidence.
Massive amount of evidence.
Show me the evidence.
What if I'm wrong? I mean, anybody could be wrong. We could all be wrong about the flying spaghetti monster and the pink unicorn and the flying teapot. You happen to have been brought up, I would presume, in the Christian faith. You know what it's like not to believe in a particular faith because you're not a Muslim, you're not a Hindu. Why aren't you a Hindu? Because you happen to have been brought up in America, not in India. If you've been brought up in India, you'd be a Hindu. If you were brought up in Denmark in the time of the Vikings, you'd be believing in Wotan and Thor. If you were brought up in classical Greece, you'd be believing in Zeus. If you were brought up in Central Africa, you'd be believing in the great Juju up the mountain. I mean, there's no particular reason to pick on the Judeo-Christian God in which by the sheerest accident you happen to have been brought up, and ask me the question, what if I'm wrong? What if you're wrong about the great Juju at the bottom of the sea?
Let's open up to the audience. We've been talking about God, evil, war, terrorism, bringing up your children, living a good life, religion and happiness, science versus religion. Who would like to answer the first question? Yes, you?
If the Almighty God appears suddenly on the cloud or on the earth or part of the universe, what is your reaction? Are you going to believe or are you going to go against him?
What would it take for you to believe in God, not just miracles?
Yeah, I mean...
Popping his head through the clouds.
Yeah, that's the thing I've worried about a lot. Obviously...
It would do wonders for the book. Would the world be a better place if religion disappeared tomorrow?
Yes.
Despite all the good things we discussed that you recognise. It does make me chuckle that you mock me for believing in a prophet that flies into a heaven, but you believe in lots and lots of universes that you can't show me, prove to me, test to me in a lab, as a basis of getting out of believing in a God and a prophet.
I'm astonished that you should compare the two.
I'm comparing the lack of evidence for the two.
Well, you cannot use your own intuitive common sense in order to diss physics. I mean, if you could do that, we wouldn't need physicists. I mean, they are very sophisticated people, they do mathematics.
But there are physicists like Paul Davies who have dissed the multiverse theory as being nonsense.
Well, Paul Davies would rather take the view that there's something mysterious in the origin of the universe, and that's another perfectly respectable physicist's view. Steven Weinberg, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist.
It's respectable if a physicist holds a view about mystery in the universe, but not if anyone else holds it.
If we're talking about the origin of the universe, that is a problem in physics, yes.
Let's end with a couple of quick questions. If, as Christopher Hitchens, the late Christopher Hitchens wrote, religion is ineradicable, and as you put it, harder to get rid of than smallpox, doesn't this basically mean that whatever motivations you have, no matter how passionately you're driven and love for the truth, you are essentially wasting your time?
I would never admit to wasting my time trying to propagate the truth, and I think I can claim a modicum of success with the people that I've read my books, the people who've attended my lectures. It's a doctrine of despair to say that we're stuck with religion for all eternity. The religions of ancient Greece and ancient Rome and the Vikings are all dead. Nobody believes in Jupiter or Thor anymore. And I have great hopes that the same is going to be true of the God of Abraham.
My question is for Professor Dawkins. Considering that atheism cannot possibly have any sense of absolute morality, would it not then be an irrational leap of faith, which atheists themselves so harshly condemn, for an atheist to decide between right and wrong?
Absolute morality, the absolute morality that a religious person might profess would include what? Stoning people for adultery? Death for apostasy? Punishment for breaking the Sabbath? These are all things which are religiously based absolute moralities. I don't think I want an absolute morality. I think I want a morality that is thought out, reasoned, argued, discussed, and based upon, I could almost say, intelligent design. Can we not design our society which has the sort of morality, the sort of society that we want to live in? If you actually look at the moralities that are accepted among modern people, among 21st century people, we don't believe in slavery anymore, we believe in equality of women, we believe in being gentle, we believe in being kind to animals. These are all things which are entirely recent. They have very little basis in biblical or Quranic scripture. They are things that have developed over historical time through a consensus of reasoning, sober discussion, argument, legal theory, political and moral philosophy. These do not come from religion. To the extent that you can find the good bits in religious scriptures, you have to cherry pick. You search your way through the Bible or the Quran and you find the occasional verse that is an acceptable profession of morality, and you say, look at that, that's religion. And you leave out all the horrible bits. And you say, oh, we don't believe that anymore, we've grown out of that. Well, of course we've grown out of it. We've grown out of it because of secular moral philosophy and rational discussion.
Tony Bird.
The Darwin deniers always say we don't have enough intermediary species in the fossil history. Does this help that?
Of course. I mean, that was true when Darwin himself lived. There weren't any. But they still say, show us the missing link. Where's your missing link? And there are quite a few of them now. And
right.
Ardipithecus is just one of a great troop of them which have been found.
So, explain this to me. I mean, we all evolved, and we all have the same brain, basically, now. So how can some of us believe in this, not believe in, we shouldn't say that, because we don't believe in this, it's the truth. We studied this, and it's scientific evidence. But how can some people feel this way about it? And then there are at least half of America who thinks the world was created by a man in a cloud in 6 days who then needed to rest. I love that. He's so powerful he can create the universe, but then he's pooped. I mean, how can we have the same brain?
I'm sorry to say we don't have the same brain. I mean, there's a great variation. One of the main principles of the Darwinian theory is plenty of variation for natural selection to work on. And there's sure enough plenty of variation in brain power. All the way from Einstein on the one hand to Sarah Palin at the other.
And, you know, Mormons, I always thought Mormonism was too batshit to catch on here in a big way. But, you know, Glenn Beck, I don't think people realize this, Glenn Beck is a Mormon. Yeah. And I think Mormonism actually could be the new hot religion because, you know, Americans, those kind of Americans love that because it makes Christianity American. Jesus is from Missouri in Mormonism. I'm not making this up, right?
Well, Joseph Smith made it up in the 19th century.
Right.
And he made it up in 17th century English, although writing in the 19th century. I mean, it's got charlatan written absolutely all over it, and how it can possibly have caught on and still be going strong and getting stronger, and even having candidates for president.
Mitt Romney
is
a candidate for president.
Yeah.
And Glenn Beck is a candidate for Thorazine. But let me move on. Let me move on to this, and I want to get the panel on this too, because this is about the Muslims. And we had 3 sleeper cells that were uncovered last week in this country. And whenever they do this, and then you start reading the backgrounds of the people they got, and at least 2 of them were absolutely serious about blowing something up. This guy Nazi from Colorado, who was going to blow up the New York City subway, and this Jordanian in Dallas, a 19-year-old Jordanian. He went, you know, the FBI put him up to it, but he was happy to go to a building, and he was about to blow it up. And when you read about these people, what to me is so scary is that, just like the 9/11 hijackers, they have this schizophrenia. It's not that they hate America. It's that they love America, and they feel guilty about it, I think. So during the day, they're eating the Chili's, and they're going to the titty bar, and then they get on the internet at night, and they want to atone for the guilt they feel for embracing the West in cyberspace. So you don't know who really is going to blow up this country.
I don't think it's about the sex or the eroticism. It's about foreign policy decisions. It may be some inner turmoil about the sexuality, but there's far more sexualized cultures around the world. They could go to Dubai, for Christ's sake, Brazil. They can go to other places if they're uncomfortable with women's breasts, which you might be implying there. There are plenty of places they can go to get more of them on a daily basis.
The problem is that they feel guilty about seeing women's breasts.
But if you're talking about big anger that causes somebody to bomb something, that's about much more than carnal knowledge. That is about foreign policy decisions. It isn't just about sex.
That certainly is in the mix.
In a big way, because there's you know, think of the targets. If it's the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, just as 2 examples, that means something. It wasn't Hollywood or the set that used to shoot Sex in the City or something that, you know, that they're going to take.
No, they don't like Hollywood, and they have tried at the LA airport.
But it's not about just that. It's because, like I said, we're a very puritanical society, comparatively speaking, to other places around the world.
They always go for phallic symbols. They did. They don't like the thing in Seattle. You know, they tried to blow that up. I'm telling you, these people, they're schizophrenic. They feel guilty about the fact that they like America. They're like, you know what, I'm in this country by day and I'm having a great time, and I shouldn't be having a great time, and I'm going to blow this country up as soon as I get off the water slide. This is terrific. Don't you think that's...
Why don't you just say it's religion? It's so obvious. I mean, why do it have to be either foreign policy or sex? I mean, these people have a holy book that tells them to kill infidels.
Well, then why is it just the Americans whose the foreign policy decisions have been, you know, very much against their livelihood or what they see as the quality of their lives? There's plenty of other people they could be taking it out on if it was just religion. Yes, there's religion. Yes, there's sexuality. Yes, there's inner demons. But I believe that the type of anger that motivates a terrorist act is mostly about politics.
Well, there's a lot of also...
I don't think it
is going on inside the world. I mean, let's remember, a lot of the suicide bombing going on today is inside Pakistan, and it's Sunnis against Shiites. It's inside Iraq. It's Sunnis against Shiites. I think foreign policy is part of it. I think that's one of the things that feeds it. I think that also religion is something that feeds it. But to me, it's another part of this is also a deep sense, goes back to the religion, which is that these young men are raised with the view that they have that Islam, and this is not a criticism, Islam sees itself as the most perfect expression of God's monotheistic message. If I were to put it in computer terms, it sees itself as God 3.0. It sees Christianity as God 2.0. It sees Judaism as God 1.0 and Hinduism as God 0.0. And I think part of the dissonance, Bill, is when they come here or in Europe, is that in their identity, they have the most perfect system, but in real life, their countries are economically behind, okay, in terms of education behind, and there's a real distance. If I've got the most perfect operating system, why am I behind? And I think that produces a lot of rage, too. It is about foreign policy, it's about what we do, it's about that, and it's also about how much they hate their own governments, okay, who also keep them down, repressed, and behind.
The Ten Commandments, which so many political figures in this country are trying to have hung up in courthouses and other public buildings, those people seldom actually know what the Ten Commandments are. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Is that really a moral principle we should be living by? At the time when that was written down, the Jews were polytheists, or had recently changed from polytheism. They believed that lots of gods existed, and they were under very strict instructions to worship only one of them, the jealous god. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. A moral principle to live by. Don't make any graven images. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Aren't there better things to worry about? Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. You may be familiar with the passage in Numbers 15:32, which I'll read to you. And while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath day. And they that found him gathering sticks brought him unto Moses and Aaron, and unto all the congregation. And they put him in ward, because it was not declared what should be done to him. And the Lord said unto Moses, the man shall surely be put to death, and the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp. And the congregation brought him without the camp, and stoned him with stones, and he died, as the Lord commanded Moses. What a wonderful moral God! Honor thy father and thy mother. That's rather a good one. But now listen to Jesus. If any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Luke 14:26. Well, finally, we come to what you might call the good commandments. There aren't very many of them. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, and so on. Thou shalt not kill, well, that's a pretty good motto. But you may remember Christopher Hitchens' sarcastic remark saying,
roughly, Moses came down from the mountain with the tablets, and the Israelites say something like, well, I like to imagine it in John Cleese's voice. Oh, I see! Watch out, not kill! Oh, how silly of me! We all thought it was a terrific idea to kill. Now we know better. Oh, silly me! Anybody who has ever read the Old Testament will certainly not wish to get their morals from it. And if you meet anybody who gets his morals from the Old Testament, I think you'd be wise to give him a wide berth. But it's not just the Old Testament. The New Testament is just as bad. The odious doctrine of the redemption of sins by Jesus. This is not Jesus' own doctrine, by the way. This is St. Paul. I used to know a very distinguished scholar of ancient history whose life's work was to try to decide whether Plato or St. Paul was the greatest shit of all time. The doctrine of the redemption of original sin is roughly like this. God, the creator of the universe, the deviser of the laws of physics, of quantum mechanics, of relativity, this genius God couldn't think of a better way to forgive our sins than to come down to earth as his alter ego, his son, and have himself hideously tortured and executed so that he could forgive himself on behalf of all mankind, including future people, whether or not they actually intended to sin when their time finally came. Actually, according to Christian theology, it doesn't matter whether you personally sin, because whether you sin or not, you are born in sin. You inherit the sin of Adam. Adam, who we now know, of course, never existed. You inherit the sin of Adam, and it comes down to you, according to St. Augustine, via the semen of all your male ancestors since Adam. What a disgusting doctrine. We are all born in sin because of our remote ancestor Adam, who never existed. And the doctrine of original sin still goes on, even in churches such as the Roman Catholic Church, which presumably accepts that Adam never existed. It's typical, by the way, of the theological mind, even the so-called sophisticated theological mind, that even when it's given up factual belief, such as in Adam, it carries on with the symbolism as though nothing had happened. It doesn't matter if the facts are disproved. You rescue them by turning them into symbols or metaphors or parables. Well, we better not get our morals from the New Testament either, or the Quran for that matter. I suppose the other way in which you might think you could get your morals from religion would be fear of the divine spy camera in the sky. Fear that God will send you to hell. That when you're boiling in the lake of fire and your skin burns off, you promptly grow another skin so that you can feel the agony all over again. There seems to be a sort of inverse relationship between the plausibility of a punishment and its terribleness. If the idea of hell were remotely plausible, then it wouldn't have to be so horrible as it actually is. And sucking up to God in the hope of going to heaven is just about as bad, just about as ignoble a reason for being moral.
It takes more faith to be like you, an atheist, than like me, a believer, and it's because of nature. You know, I just don't think we could have lucked out to have the tides come in, the tides go out, sun go up, sun go down. Don't think it could have happened.
We have a very full understanding of why the tides go in, the tides go out, of why the continents drift about, of why life is there. Science is ever more piling on the evidence, piling on the understanding.
But it had to get there. I understand that you know, the physiology of it, if you will, but it had to come from somewhere. And that is the leap of faith that you guys make, that it just happened.
Well, a leap of faith, you don't actually need a leap of faith. You're the one who needs a leap of faith, because you are actually, the onus is on you to say why you believe in something. There's an infinite number of gods you could believe in. I take it you don't believe in Zeus or Apollo or Thor. You believe in, presumably, the Christian God, Jesus.
See, Jesus was a real guy. I could see him.
Yeah.
You know, and I know what he did. And so I'm not positive that Jesus is God, but I'm throwing in with Jesus rather than throwing in with you guys, because you guys can't tell me how it all got here. You guys don't know.
We're working on it. Physicists are working.
When you get it, then maybe I'll listen.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, if you look at the history of science over the centuries, the amount that's gained in knowledge each century is stupendous. In the beginning of the 21st century, we don't know everything. We have to be humble. We have to, in humility, say that there's a lot that we still don't know.
And, you know, being humble is a Christian virtue.
Well,
so there you go.
Of course it is.
All right, when you guys figure it out, then you come back here and tell me, because until that time, I'm sticking with Judeo-Christian philosophy and my religion of Roman Catholicism, because it helps me as a person.
That's different. If it helps you, that's
absolutely.
Great.
And
but that doesn't mean it's true.
Well, it's true for me. You see, I believe.
You mean true for you is different from true for anybody else? How can something be
absolutely,
true for you?
Because I can't
Something's either got to be true or not.
I can't, no. I can't prove to you that Jesus is God. So that truth is mine and mine alone. But you can't prove to me that Jesus is not. So you have to stay in your little
You can't
belief
prove
system.
that Zeus is not. You can't prove that Apollo is not. Or
Well, I saw Apollo, man. He was down there. He's not looking good. Now, we also differ in the sense that you feel that religion has been a bane, B-A-N-E, to civilization, and I feel atheism has. And I will point to the worst mass murderers in modern times: Hitler, Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot. All confirmed atheists, all people who wanted to wipe out religion. Now, I know you can point to the Crusades and you can point to Al-Qaeda right now. I mean, it's there, and there's no question. But I say that I'm throwing in with the founding fathers of the United States, which saw religion, spirituality, as a moderating influence, as a good thing if people embrace the true tenets. Go ahead.
The founding fathers of the United States were secularists above all. Some of them were religious, some of them were not, but they were above all secularists who believed in keeping church and state
They
separate.
had to, because of the oppression in Europe.
That was what they were,
Right.
precisely.
But
I mean, that was
almost
what they were
all of them, they all said a prayer before their deliberations. In their letters, and I have almost all their letters, they all reference the deity. Our Declaration of Independence references heavily. But they saw it as a moderating influence because the federal government at that point couldn't control the country. And they said, you know, if people follow Jesus, then the country is going to be better.
It may well be a moderating influence. As for Hitler and Stalin and so on, I mean, of course, Hitler, by the way, was a Roman Catholic.
No, he never was. He was raised in that home,
yeah, well,
but he rejected it early on.
We can dispute that. Stalin was an atheist, no question. But Stalin did the bad things he did, not because he was an atheist. I mean, Hitler and Stalin both had moustaches, but we don't say it was their moustaches that made them evil.
I don't think they had any moral foundation, any of those guys. I will say,
I don't either.
Your book is fascinating, and congratulations.
Tell me where I'm going wrong here. I believe in creative design. I believe in evolution, but I think it was overseen by a higher power because, as we just stated, and you acknowledged, you guys still haven't figured out how it all began.
There's a great deal that science hasn't worked out, and we don't know how it all began, but it's a most extraordinary piece of warped logic to say that because science can't answer a particular question, you're going to throw in your lot with Jesus, and there's no evidence that he did it either. You'll never get any evidence for any of them. Throw in your lot with science, which at least is working on the problem.
Well, here's the problem that I have with throwing him in a lot with science. Science doesn't advance the human condition in any moralistic way, and Jesus did. See, my thesis is that if everybody followed the teachings of Jesus Christ, that we'd have peace on earth, love your brother, everybody'd love one another, and we'd almost be an idyllic civilization. Now, am I 100% sure that Jesus is God? No, but I choose to believe that because the man was so extraordinary, and what he did in his 33 years on earth still resonates to this day. That, I think, is more powerful than your belief that, hey, someday we might figure it all out, but in the meantime, we're not going to believe in any deity.
Why would you muddle up the question of giving you a moral compass for life, which is important, with the other question, which is explaining
the nature of the world, the nature of life, the nature of the universe. That's what science is about.
Okay, and I understand that, but I don't think that my belief system contradicts science. And I do believe that there is a higher power, and in my life, I can point to it, I see it. But what disturbs me about you guys, and I'm putting you into this category perhaps unjustly, is that you seem to look down on believers.
Well, there is a problem when you guys, if I could turn it back on you, try to say that because you believe what you do, because of a holy book and because of the way you've been brought up, therefore that entitles you to go into science classes and tell teachers what they can or cannot teach. You may think that God oversaw evolution, and that's a point of view that you could probably defend, but leave it out of the science class.
It's not fair to leave it out of the science class if the science class is incomplete. And you, by your own admission, say we don't know how it all began. So if the science class is going to say evolution only, but I really don't know how it started, that gap has got to be explored.
You must see that it's quite a remarkable piece of illogic to say that because science can't fill a particular gap, therefore we have to turn to Christianity.
You don't have to turn anywhere, you just have to present it. You don't have to turn to it, you present it.
Will you listen to me and stop shouting at me?
Well, turn your earpiece down. I'm not shouting, that's the way I usually talk. Go ahead.
Okay, I know it is, I've been warned about it. Just because science has a gap in its knowledge, that does not entitle you to turn to any other particular alternative. Pick on a better science.
No, that's fascism. For you to say that you can't mention
fascism.
Yeah. For you to say that you cannot, in a public school classroom, a science classroom, talk about brilliant men, and I mean brilliant, smarter than you, who do believe in a higher power, who do believe that there was an overseer of the universe. If you insist you can't even mention it, that is fascism, sir.
What you called fascism was my statement that if science can't answer something, you should therefore turn to Christianity.
Not turn,
if a particular scientific theory doesn't work, do some better science.
No. You present in the science classroom all the alternatives.